Today I'm celebrating Johannes Gutenberg, the man who was responsible for the invention of the printing press, something which has radically transformed our world over the last 200 or so years. His impact, I suppose, was most profoundly felt in the initial stages through the popularization of the Bible. The Bible was a book that went from something that had originally been written in Greek or Latin and was only to be read by clergy, the priests, the bishops, those that were seen as the guardians of the Catholic faith, the representatives of the Vatican, who were seen as the sole arbiters of wisdom and truth. Then there was Martin Luther, who said, no, we really need to be able to see these scripts in our own language. And so we began to see in churches the arrival of the Bible written into English or to French or Spanish. And then consequently, the Gutenberg press suddenly meant that everybody could have a Bible in their own home. It's difficult to imagine how much of an impact that would have had on our society, especially as now we're veering dangerously close to becoming a completely godless society. Not that I advocate scriptural allegiance or, I've never actually completely read the Bible myself, something I intend to do one day. And yet, what that meant to society at that time was that people were able to take their own relationship with God into their own hands, to see the words that priests had up to that point been interpreting on their behalf. It was a real moment of liberation, and at that time there were already a huge percentage of people who were literate. The 90% in very short time, more than 90% of the population were completely literate and able to read the Bible themselves, which just goes to show the degree of fascination and curiosity people had to see what was in that book. It showed how profoundly people who are inclined to learn something, how quickly and how deeply they can learn what they need to learn. So within a very short amount of time, the Western world had become completely literate. And then, of course, the printing press found its power in the distribution of political pamphlets and other social texts that were driven to raise people from their seats to protest and to be aware of what was going on in their society. The story of the printing press is really one of human liberation. And yet, there's an absolutely fascinating book by a man called David Abram about how, as we've begun to enter this abstract world of symbols written on pages, we have somewhat lost our natural connection with the natural world. We've become misled by the reality of these symbols to believe that legal fictions exist and have dominion over us. It would be very difficult to make people believe that they have to obey unjust laws if it wasn't for the government's ability to write it down and say, there it is on paper, there's the law, that's what you have to obey. If we didn't treat these written symbols with such reverence, maybe people would still be a bit more in touch with their inbuilt God-given autonomy, their power, their birthright to exist that emanates from out of this earth and through our feet. So the Gutenberg press played this pivotal role in human evolution, and yet it has also perhaps ensnared us in our own ingenuity. the one thing that I really hope and pray is that through the use of language and those written symbols, we may yet find our liberation. There are people like Alan Watts who have argued this very persuasively, that as long as we are aware of the trap that we are setting for ourselves in the use of language, we can still step beyond those limitations, those self-imposed limitations that have the capacity to ensnare us. So even with all these provisos, today I'm choosing to celebrate Johannes Gutenberg for his ingenuity, which, you know, the technological prowess of humanity is just such an incredible thing, and this man played a very significant role in probably taking very basic elements and combining them to solve a new problem. But who could have imagined the impact that that has had on this planet? So again, celebrating Johannes Gutenberg.